Okay, Sami, you just come from the Worlds, and outcomes are always the sort of the final line. I thought our senior team dominated for most of the games against the U.S. And what was your take as a broadcaster that whole experience relative to hockey?
Yeah, I mean, so if we're just specifically talking U.S. and Canada,
yeah,
in the rivalry series, Canada and the U.S. took the first 3, and then Canada took the last 4. So it was an interesting sort of build throughout the season. And then in the actual game, in the games, the U.S. dominated their games, scoring way more goals, and Canada had a tougher time scoring goals. But when it came to that one game in the preliminary game where Jamie Lee Rattray scored the overtime winner, the U.S. was, I thought played better that game. I thought I thought they were going to win that game. I mean, the way that they, Canada, I think was opportunistic and got some goals, and then Canada with the unfortunate offside goal by the U.S. that was allowed, and then had extra seconds put on the clock. Anyways, the whole thing just was sort of tilted in the U.S. favor, but Canada still prevailed. So I thought that was really a team builder, and I mean the crowd in the arena, I've never seen anything like that. It was it's a small venue in Brampton, and just the crowd was just amazing when Jamie Lee Rattray scored that goal after 9 shootout shots. That was incredible. That really was the moment of the game. But then the final game, I thought that it certainly was back and forth, but the U.S. seemed to capitalize on the fact that they had been able to put the puck in. They had that confidence around the net. The U.S., I would say, had a goalie that hadn't played in the World Championship Finals, and Canada was able to score when they could get the puck near the net, but just didn't have as many shots. And I mean, it was neck and neck. It could have gone either way. And in fact, with 9 minutes left in the third period, we as broadcasters, you're preparing for what's coming next, right? So usually by about the 10-minute mark, you're discussing with your video person what videos you want to have between periods and what your theme is going to be. And then they can start to build that out with the rest of the period. So we were starting to talk about that because there's going to be a 15-minute intermission before overtime, and it was still tied at that point. So that's when the tough penalty call against Canada happened. They went down 5-4. And that's, to me, not really what broke the Canadians' back. It was the unfortunate puck over the glass, which you just felt for Claire Thompson. That was just so hard to watch and see. But, yeah, I thought that in the end, I mean, Canada played excellent. It just came down to sort of that final 2 minutes, and then it ended up 6-2. So I don't think the score is really indicative of how they played. But like any U.S.-Canada final, it could have gone either way. I think the score just doesn't really show that, but with 9 minutes left, it was still tied and still exciting. So I think they did everything they could. But, I think it was noticeable that the other pool players, the other teams on other countries, are playing games, and it was noticeable these guys aren't playing games. So getting into game situation, they played 7 big rivalry series games this year, but that's kind of it. So I think that they're going to have to change something moving forward, or the rest of the world is going to continue to get closer and closer. You're right, Wally, doing all those B-pool games was incredible. Like, seeing some of the talent on the other teams was really remarkable, and the individual skills, let alone when you got 2 good ones on another team, like Mueller and Stalder playing together were like any combination in hockey. I mean, those were really fun to watch. But even players like Hutsak on Hungary, it was, I mean, her skill level was incredibly high too. I mean, each of the teams had these great players. So anyways, I digress. I could go on and on about it, but I think Kim has a question.
Oh, I don't have a question. I wanted to chime in on the game, and because I was there, it's just one of the minions in the stands. Although I must have got the worst drawn tickets in the history of hockey. I bought them right away. I bought the full package. You know, you pay $500, you get every single game. But whatever my seat was like the visiting team was always directly behind me. So if we were playing the Swiss, it was Switzerland. If we were playing Team USA, it was Team USA. And they're just going crazy the whole time. And of course, you never get on camera, right? Because they're rarely like panning to that little crew of people. But I don't know. My thought on that final game was that Canada received a couple really soft calls in their favor at the beginning of that period and did nothing with them. And I think the US, like happens all the time in minor hockey, right? You kill a couple penalties that you don't think you deserved, and the momentum shifts very swiftly the other way, right? That call against Stace, like, clearly was not a call. A couple like that. So that's where I saw the tide turn quite
well,
quick.
and no, so many people said to me, those two, like, it's so bad. They went 5-on-3 at the end. And I say, yeah, that one call was bad, but like, you can't not call the puck over the glass. Like,
oh, for sure. No, I thought,
the refs didn't make that happen,
No, that was there was the even up call, but I think the momentum shift was
yes,
when the US killed off those calls, and they were just like, red eyes, ready to go. But I agree. I watched some of the other games, and I had quite a few players that I've coached who were on different teams who came from Toronto but ended up on France or Hungary or what have you. I thought the Swiss Japan game in the round robin was a great hockey game, and definitely had all the ups and downs that we love. But I had to admit, as I was watching the Canada play in the quarterfinal there, and when what was she, 15-year-old scored the game tying goal
Hannah
to send it to
16, yeah.
Holy crap! The 05s and 06, I couldn't believe they were 05s and 06. I was double checking the website, being like, is that really? And I mean, that number 7 they had on D, who was an 05, was phenomenal. And I just,
Mira Yadaker. Yeah, she's good.
I admire these 16-year-olds who are like pushing Mary-Philippe Poulin around, like, yeah, what, you want to fight? And I'm just thinking, like, I love this. This is an attitude in female hockey that we need to like package and give, like, at all age groups, like not to actualize it necessarily, but kind of that like intensity, and to see that from those young players on that stage. I mean, I really thought Sweden was going to win that game, to be perfectly honest.
Well, and Sweden's going to be good in the, like, they now have one solid line, right? With Olsen, Svensson, and Youngbloom. They're really good, but there's just one line.
Yeah.
So they just need another couple lines to compete.
But I think my biggest takeaway is I was at the Worlds in Mexico City, which is like, Wally, like the air, like this is a whole other experience. Like it's like the stories I can tell. But I finished there on Friday night, flew in on the red eye because it was my daughter's birthday on Saturday, and was at the Canada-Japan game that night. So within 24 hours, I went from losing in a shootout to Chinese Taipei with Iceland in Mexico on the world's worst ice, to being in a Canada game where the entire stands is full of people. And I took videos of the ice and the Zamboni being like, look, it's actually frozen. It was incredible, but it was interesting, going from one world championship to the other. Obviously they're off by a number of divisions. But even just, being able to compare and contrast, and thinking about those top players on teams like Latvia or Iceland or Mexico or Spain, like these are the teams in the group. How the heck do those players get so good? Like, Iceland has 200 girls who play hockey, like, total in the country. And we had 22 girls on the national team. Like, it was really interesting, and it made me feel that much more fortunate and spoiled for what we have in Canada, and especially what we have in Toronto. For that experience. But the atmosphere in that rink was electric. And I went to the first game. I told my daughter, Mommy used to play here. And she's like, yeah, Mommy, I know you used to play hockey. Like, I was like, just not, they had the like jerseys out, and like there's like Hef's jersey, and like Mommy was on a team with her with that jersey, and my daughter's like, can we get popcorn? Like, Just doesn't care. It's amazing. Couldn't care less. Just give me the candy, Mom. Like, stop telling me these boring stories.
I also really enjoyed the intentionality of that World Championship, that the announcers were women, the ushers were women, the people giving out the MVPs were women. Every step of the way, there's just an intentionality around it. Or men that were heavily involved in women's hockey. It really was an OWHA. Seemed like intentionality around every step of that too, to create the next leaders, not just on the ice, which I found really special too about the whole thing. Like TSN's crew, they were camera women, that was really neat, and things like that. Nice to see.
Would have been nicer to see more men or more women on the bench. That's stood out to me.
Yes.
How many fully male benches there were. Obviously.
Yes, and you're right, fully male. Like,
yeah, not even like a trainer.
Not just like a coach. Yeah.
The other thing, I was curious your guys' thoughts. I watched that shootout with Canada, and I usually don't pay a lot of attention to handedness, and I usually don't think it matters a lot. Like, coaches at minor hockey are like, oh, I need a lefty. I'm like, she can't turn right. Like, who cares? But in the shootout with Canada and US, the majority of the shooters were right-handed. Almost all of the shooters were right-handed. And I thought that was interesting because the right-handed players are in a huge minority on both those teams and on most hockey teams. I haven't really done any research into it to see like if there's some validity, but Sami as a goalie might be able to shine some light on it. It just really struck me. There was righty after righty after righty, and I never had thought in my whole life, is there an advantage to being a righty in a shootout situation or not? So I don't know, Sami, if you've ever put any thought to that or if that's something you've noticed, but for whatever reason, it stood out.
It's an interesting thought to think about, because I'm not sure that there's an advantage either way, but I think there's an advantage to the goalie just seeing the same thing over and over. Like if I'm going against a righty and then I continue to go against righties, you're kind of playing in the same way. So I wonder if that's what, worked in the goalie's favor and why it really extended. It's an interesting thought, because when you go back and forth, you have to think consciously as the goalie, what is an easy shot for them, what is a hard shot, and sort of play your game accordingly. But if it's righty after righty after righty, I didn't notice that, but that's a good pickup.
But it wasn't all of them, right? But it just obviously you're going to send Poulin out like as a lefty, but it struck me, and I only ever had one shootout move, and I think I went in a shootout once in my whole life, which probably is indicative of how good my shootout move was. But I did think it's an interesting way to end a game. Like I used to hate it, and as a fan, I love it, even if my team loses. Like I just think it's so exciting to watch.
Probably now as a coach, you probably have some wicked shootout moves because you've been working on them and all your skills.
But the problem is I do it once and like I still use the same move and it still works. And then the goalie's like, I know the move. I don't have any other. But yeah, on the 7-year-old goalies who just fall over on their face, I still have some street cred in that vicinity, I guess. But I actually have a backhand unlike the rest of my players, so that's helpful. Sami, are you coaching next year? Have you decided yet?
Like I would love it. I would love it so much, but I don't know that I can convince both my husband and my daughter to do it. So yeah, I don't know. It's a lot with the Toronto Six because we play every day on the weekends at 2. So it worked out perfectly. The practices were at 8 in the morning, so I could kind of work it out. But if they're not coming with me, it's really not fair on my family to then be gone the entire day from whatever they're doing. So we have her in lacrosse right now. She seems to really enjoy box lacrosse because you don't have to put any equipment on, or not box lacrosse, field lacrosse. So field lacrosse, you just have to put the goggles on, and she seems to enjoy that. So I'm trying to find something that I saw Ellen Hughes, as I mentioned earlier, and she's basically raised those 3 boys. And she knows my plight with my daughter. And so she was asking about it, and she said, just tell her this is what we do in this family. And because when she was raising her boys, she had 3 boys at home, and Jim was on the road the whole time, and so she just took them to the rink every day, and that's all she knew. And so she's like, "This is what we do. You play hockey." And I said, "Yeah, it's harder with one though when they don't want to do it and you're dragging them. It's yeah, just a predicament I never really thought that I would necessarily be in. But they are their own little people, that's for sure. So we'll see."
Well, I have one who doesn't play, and he repeatedly tells me how much he hates hockey. So that's my oldest, but the girls seem to have are invested.
And when did you give up on sort of pushing him into it? Did you give him like a year or two, or?
I mean, I never pushed him into it. Quite frankly, I never wanted to coach boys hockey. So maybe that just like when I asked him, maybe even just my tone was like, please say no type of tone. Like maybe, I don't know. Like I do think kids are smarter than we are. But we did ask him, because there's a community rink like where the Markham team used to play, like right down the street from us. And so they have house league, and I'd always ask him. Now we got to the point where I said, do you want to do hockey or squash? And he's gotten quite into squash, so that's his thing. But he's like my husband, more introverted, more quiet, doesn't like really thrive in team environments and like gets super excited, and like that's his vibe. So I think he's an individual sport person, at least if that's something he wants to pursue competitively. I see a value in him being in a team environment because that's not his natural tendency. But I also don't think he's going to thrive in that environment. Whereas my daughters are the opposite. They're more like me. So the 5-year-old is the
we'll
one.
See. I mean, it's the 24th summer hockey school season coming up now. So I am excited for that and excited to do all of that. So that will never go away. And then, you know, when she goes away to college, I can get back to coaching locally.
There you go. Yeah. Only 14 more years or 13
14 more years. Till then, I just coach my coaches. So
perfect.
Yeah, I just pretend like I'm doing something around them. Did you think about this? Or don't forget about the third goalie. Make sure they're included in the team photo.
Oh, that reminds me, Sammy. I ran a tryout last night for U11 AA. We had 50 kids on the ice. 50. It was amazing. 50 and it was not a big rink. It was at rinks, which you can imagine is not a huge ice surface. And it was really funny. So I show up, and I mean, it's just hockey school to me, right? Like just keep them moving, keep them going. You have to scrimmage at some point so that the coaches can, you know, look at players. But all the parents, so of course I know all of them, are like, how are you going to do this? Did you get other ice? And I said to them, this is like, it's like my Olympics, right? Like this is my gold medal
This
game.
is what I do. This is
like,
what I do.
This is like, give me 60 kids and no practice plan. And I'm like, this is so exciting. This is where, like, why I was meant to be put on this earth. So like I had them all going. They were rarely standing around. And I got like 15 emails from parents this morning being like, that was so impressive. How did you do that? But it was a lot of kids. Like, you know, you blow the whistle for them to come in, and they just kept coming in.
More and more waves.
6 goalies. It was a lot, but it was a lot of fun. But a lot of parents like, what are you going to do? Like they were so worried that I wasn't going to figure it out. I'm like, I think we'll be fine. But it was cool to see that level of talent, like, you know, amongst 9 and 10-year-olds. I mean, there's some girls who are quite strong. Like,
is that your daughter's team?
No, she's younger. That would be the age group up. My daughter will be in U9 for a couple more years. So this is the age group above.
Gotcha.
But yeah, they managed to get a couple girls to come over from the boys, the better boys hockey, as we like to call it, and come back to the dark side with the girls. So a couple of girls who would have been playing AAA this year.
I'm up in Timmins right now. I just landed in Timmins, and I'm doing the OHF provincials tonight, the banquet. So it's U18A, I guess. So I'm rarely around boys hockey, so it'll be interesting to see the different dynamic.
There'll be a lot of really good haircuts. I can tell you that much, Sammy. Some playoff hair is going to look.
I'll take some good pictures.
I'm sure Hal probably sees them best in Minnesota, but that's going to be a look for sure. Anyways, I got to jump off, guys. It was good to see everyone. Thanks for getting Courtney involved, Wally. That was great to see her again.
And Wally, thanks for allowing us to just kind of chat some of the times too. It's fun to just kind of get connected. So much appreciated. You guys just allow this like women's hockey talk to go on. I appreciate it.
We're well trained.
I